in the bosom of one of those coves which indent the eastern shore of the Hudson, lies a lap of land among high rolling hills, which is one of the quietest places in the whole world. If ever I should wish for a retreat to dream away the remnant of a troubled life, I know of none more promising than this little valley by the name of Sleepy Hollow. A drowsy influence pervades the atmosphere, a contagion in the very air that breathes forth of dreams and fancies. A witching power holds a spell over the good people living here, causing them to walk in constant reverie, given to all kinds of marvelous beliefs. The whole neighborhood abounds with local tales, haunted spots, and twilight superstitions. Stars shoot and meteors glare oftener across this valley than any other part of the country. Some say the place was bewitched by a quack doctor during the early days. Others, that it was cursed by a Wecqueesquake chieftain. Or it was the woman in white that haunts the dark glen at Raven Rock, heard to shriek on winter nights before storms, having perished there in the snow. She wails, "My beloved, will you come for me, my beloved?" The dominant spirit, however, was an apparition of a galloping Hessian trooper without a head, had lost it in a battle in the Revolutionary War, and thus forever and anon scours these roads seeking that head. The ancient historians allege the body of this trooper is buried here in this venerable church's yard. Now, about 30 years ago, a fellow by the name of Ichabod Crane sojourned here with the purpose of serving as schoolmaster for the children, though the pay proved a real pittance. I recall our hero as being tall, but supple, with a prominent prow. A mark of distinction, a sign of inquisitiveness. Ichabod Crane was considered among the ladies a fellow of some importance. Why, he was a traveling gazette of gossip, and second only to the parson as a man of learning. Why, he was of such great erudition, he was said to have read several books, right through to the very end. You'd find him on a Saturday afternoon with a whole bevy of farm lasses following behind. "Ichabod, Ichabod! Oh, gather round," he would say. "I'll give you a reading from a gravestone. I think I remember one. Behold ye who pass me by, know, one day thou shalt be as I, worm-eaten and in the ground." Oh, Ichabod! Now take that same charming fellow, put him in the schoolhouse, and oh, he became a regular martinet. He would say to some obstreperous Dutch lad loitering along the flowery path to knowledge, "You will thank me for this lesson, for as long as day shall let ye live." Then, when the sun set, Ichabod needed to find from among his students one whose mother was a good cook. He was a huge feeder, couldn't provide for himself. He would say, "Oh, Dame Van Winkle, why the sky is jealous of the blue in thine eyes." "Oh, Ichabod Crane, would you like to stay for dinner?" "Oh, I mustn't. Refuse." The farmer would come in. "What? You haven't invited the scarecrow schoolmaster to dine with us again? Why, he's got the dilating powers of an anaconda." Indeed. But Ichabod's favorite part of the meal came when the dining was done and the smoke would rise, for so too would the inevitable telling of the ghostly tales of Sleepy Hollow. Then the schoolmaster faced A long, wending walk home, with the ghost stories crowding into his head, nature conspiring to haunt. What was that? Ooh, 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 ooh. Ichabod, to ward off these uncouth goblins, would lift his voice in psalm. In linked sweetness, long drawn out, may all ye spirits be cast out. Ichabod could have enjoyed a quiet life, passing by the by in Sleepy Hollow, had he not become bewitched by a spirit more bewildering than any gathering of goblins, ghosts, or covenant of witches. Ichabod had fallen under the spell of Katrina Van Tassel. She was known not only for her beauty, but her bounty, her vast expectations. Her father was Baltus Van Tassel, the wealthiest farmer in the county, though often he'd note, "Now, I ain't proud of my wealth, I'm just presiding over it until the day when Katrina marries. Then she and her husband can have me old estate." Katrina was, withal, a little bit of a coquette, dressing in fashions to set off her charms, and she wore a shockingly short petticoat in order to better reveal the most well-turned ankle in all of Sleepy Hollow. Ichabod Crane, then, grew enraptured every time he passed by Van Tassel's. The fields of wheat would wave to him, while the orchards would beckon, and the pigs and the chickens and the cows on this homestead, oh, it just enchanted Ichabod to no end. Alas, Ichabod's path to true love got thwarted by a burly, roaring, rollicking, roistering blade by the name of Abraham Van Brunt. Oh, this fellow was Herculean proportions, with prowess upon horseback, and double-jointed. Thus he was universally known as Brom Bones. If ever there was fight or frolic in Sleepy Hollow, Brom would be in the thick of it. But there was more mischief than malice about this fellow, and he, too, took a fancy to Katrina Van Tassel. He tried every trick in his book to rid himself of his rival. "I'll double you up, schoolmaster, and stick you on a shelf." He stuffed up the chimney in the schoolhouse, but Ichabod would not be smoked out. Another time, Brom trained a dog to bay in a most ludicrous way whenever Ichabod gave his singing lesson to Katrina. "Sing after me, my popinjay, in linked sweetness long drawn out." But before Katrina could utter a quaver, "Oh, oh, 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 oh!" One fine fall afternoon, when frost nipped autumn's raiments into scarlets and purples, a messenger arrived at the schoolhouse. "Thou art cordially invited to attend tonight a harvest frolic to be held at the homestead of Baltus and Frau Van Tassel." A frolic? Opportunity had knocked. Oh, I'll be able to dance and court Katrina. Oh, but what of these pesky pupils? "Children, huh? Children, school's dismissed! Yay!" Ichabod suited himself up like a knight of yore, pulling his hair back into a queue, putting on his cravat, and adding his fine frock. "Hans von Ripper, I am going to the Van Tassels. Mayst I borrow your fine steed?" "I'm gonna use that horse. Instead, you're gonna take gunpowder." Gunpowder was a broken-down, sway-backed, hammer-headed, one-eyed mare. And perched upon Von Ripper's Sunday saddle, Ichabod Crane looked more like a gimpy grasshopper coming down the post road than a gallant knight of yore off to woo his love, the Lady Katrina. All arrived at Van Tassel's in their Sunday bests. The Van Tassels set out tables, groaning with the bounty of their farms. Baltus cried, "Fall to it and help yourselves!" And there the doughty doughnuts, the crisp crumbling crother, the cakes of all kinds, why, sugar cakes, honey cakes, sweet cakes, short cakes, a whole family of cakes, not to mention the roasted shad, the braised chicken, the dainty ducks. Yum. Oh. The ancient fiddler struck bow to string. Everyone jigged. Curmudgeonly farmers spun their old biddies around like tops. But soon they had to give way to Ichabod Crane. Ichabod was happy. His partner in the dance was the blooming Katrina Van Tassel. Ichabod Crane, you're such a good dancer. Would you fetch me a cup of cider? Meanwhile, Brom Bones, smitten with love and jealousy, sat brooding in the corner. When the dance ended, Ichabod joined a sage group centered around old Baltus puffing on his pipe, gossiping and talking about the times of the redcoats, the refugees, the cowboys and spies. Here, however, ghost stories rise inevitably in Sleepy Hollow. The woman in white, when I heard her before that storm wailing piteously, I jumped. Jumped? Ha! I was a heretical disbeliever in ghosts till one evening I got chased over brake and bramble by the headless horseman of Sleepy Hollow. Its bones began to glow and it flew over the treetops, but then it threw me into the brook. I've a thrice marvelous tale. One night I was coming out of the Jug Tavern in Sing Sing, and I'd seen him over there glowering. Well, I was on Daredevil. I calls a bowl of punch to the first one across the bridge by the old Dutch church, and by goblin, a race was on. And I was on Daredevil. I had him beat all hollow. But just as we come upon the bridge, in a blaze of fire and a blast of brimstone, it vanishes. You see, that goblin won't cross the bridge by the old Dutch church. Everyone, I'm ready for bed. Everyone, good night. Thank you for coming. Good night, good night. Fare thee well, good riddance. Good night. Ichabod alone remained behind. For a little tete-a-tete with our heiress, he believed himself to be on the high road to success. What happened at that interview, I cannot say. Faith, I wasn't there. It didn't go well for the pedagogue. He sallied forth after just a brief exchange, looking desolate and crestfallen. Could that coquette have been using her charms to encourage the pedagogue in order to get to his rival? Heaven knows. Not I. Not I. It was the very witching time at night that heavy-hearted Ichabod mounted his horse and pursued his travels homewards. All the ghost stories in nature conspired to haunt him. The stars sunk deep in the sky. The hour was as dismal as himself. A small brook crossed the road and ran into a marshy grove. In the dark shadows, Ichabod perceived something huge, misshapen, like some gigantic monster ready to spring upon him. The hair on the pedagogue rose on his neck. in linked sweetness, who are you? Who are you, I say? With a scramble and a bound, the towering shadow stood at once in the middle of the road. The moon revealed the figure against the sky. It appeared to be a horseman. He was headless. Ichabod's horror turned to terror, observing that the head, which should have rested on the shoulder, was carried forward on the pommel of the saddle. Ichabod gave Gunpowder a half-score kicks in the ribs. The goblin pursued. The saddle slipped under. Ichabod gripped Gunpowder's neck so fiercely he almost popped out the plow horse's lone good eye. If I can just make it to the bridge, I'll be saved! Dawn dispersed any lingering spirits. Gunpowder grazed in the pasture as if nothing had happened the night before. But Hans van Ripper had lost his Sunday saddle, and Sleepy Hollow lost their schoolmaster. Sunday, an expedition mounted by the brook next to the Picantico Bridge. And there they found a tattered hat and a shattered pumpkin. The sages of Sleepy Hollow reckoned Ichabod Crane was carried away by the galloping goblin. Whenever Brom Bones heard the story, he chuckled all the way to the altar in this venerable church where he married the blooming Katrina. A drover, after some years, came up from New York City reporting that he had seen a tall, lanky fellow with a prominent nose practicing the law, a justice in the 10-pound court. Could it have been our Ichabod Crane? But what of the headless horseman dragging him off to Hades? Wondering what I think? Faith, I don't know if I believe the half of it myself.